all of that is really something unique in one's history, in fact, in human history. In fact, the way world wars have affected all of us, especially that generation, similar way the pandemic has. Across the world, it has reshaped the life. And it is so good to see that the academics in India, be it central institutions, be it law schools, or even other departments, law departments, the way they have taken up the matter of pandemic and the way they have tried to connect it with their own profession, with their own system, is really really very good to see. Uh, this has really shaped us, really forced us to think differently, to think altogether differently. In next 40-45 minutes, I'll try to share my experience, and I'll try to connect the pandemic with that of right to education, the topic which is given to me for today's talk, and how right to education or education per se is going to have a lot of impact and is already so much influenced by the pandemic itself. We all know a little bit introduction would be apt here. We all know how the school education has been transformed, right from village to the city, right from the town areas to cosmopolitan cities like a typical area in Barabanki to that of Lucknow or Mumbai or Delhi, how they have been reshaped during pandemic. I still remember UP government's order because I'm also somewhere connected with the education, especially in the rural area. And I remember there was an order from UP government that every school is supposed to bring their own website. They have to every day report that how many online lectures or materials were distributed amongst their scholars, their students. And I remember that DIOS officer, district education officer, they have issued instructions to all the principals and managements that you should have a WhatsApp group, you should have a Google group over which you keep on sending every day's study material for even a primary school kids. And gone are the days when we were taking it little cautiously when our kids used to have a mobile phone. These days we have to give them mobile phone, we have to give them as a part of their education system, just like a pen and pencil or a notebook, which we have been hitherto giving to all of these kids. So life has gone a complete shift, I would say. uh, Similarly, even in higher education, lot of changes were there. Still, we are facing all those things in a daily routine. In my own law school, in the month of June, when we started to conduct the examination, suddenly there was a surge of COVID, things, and around 20 plus students got infected, and we have to close the examination, and then just for a purpose of breaking the chain, we have postponed it for another time. So what we can see here, that there's a lot of you can say chaos. There is a lot of complexities occurring there, and we are yet in the process. We are yet to learn a lot of things to cope up such situations. Apart from this, participants, the pandemic has changed the way, changed the pattern, the way we have been looking towards the education profession and the connection between education and profession. You all know the law schools might be closed during COVID, the courts physically might not be working during COVID, but both of them were working even during COVID in another mode. So online education was going on in law schools, online education was going on in law departments, and at the same point of time, online justicing was going on in the courts, be it these district courts, be it the High Court or even the Supreme Court. In fact, you all know the Supreme Court has established altogether a full-fledged committee in the leadership of Justice Chandrachud, who was looking into all these details, that how the court system could be put on online mechanism, and how the court and the court officers from bar to bench, as well as the clients, could be coming virtually in the court, not physically but virtually in the court. So what all this has taught us? This has taught us one thing, that whatever situation may be outside, even if pandemic like situation is outside, the life is not going to compromise anything. It will go on. It will continue to grow. It will continue to work in that way. And with little bit improvisation, whatever is required, we have to cope up with this situation. Having said this, let's understand the education with that of the pandemic like situation. Why and how we should see education now onwards. I'm emphasizing this word now onwards because of the reason that in earlier days, and when I'm saying earlier days, maybe till yesterday, we were looking education, especially the professional education like law. We have been looking the education as is something of mere learning, as if something of a little bit of skill development and substantially learning, mugging up of the subjects, and getting pass in a 3 hours examination. But now onwards, we have to take it very seriously that education is no more mere learning. Two things we have to remember: one, the pandemic, and another, the pandemic like situation which is currently there in India, and a similar situation is across the world, is the job crisis. We all know that these two things, though seems to be unconnected, but they are actually connected. They have actually redesigned our whole futurology, how we are going to accept the future, in what way we are going to address the concerns of future. They're going to decide it. I hope that you must have come across with the data. The government of India has submitted a data to the UN itself, to the IMF itself, that our GDP during 2020 to 22 was actually negative. During this period, more than 1.5 crore people have lost their job. During this period, more than crore of people have gone from above the poverty line to below the poverty line. So we have to understand that there is something flawed, there is something problematic in the whole education along with the other issues. So I'll be addressing here the issue of education only. Now, participants, since this particular topic in which you are joining today or for last 2 3 days, and we will continue to have discussion on the sustainable development goal. If you see the sustainable development goal, be it goal number 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, or 9, 10, and 16, these are at around, I would say, a total of 8 goals, which is so closely connected with right to education. I have just marked here the name of these goals. If you see, first goal, no poverty, the goal regarding poverty elevation by 2030, whereby millions and millions of people who are below the poverty line is expected to come over that and overcome the extreme cases of poverty, malnutrition, and all. Similarly, issue of inequality, issue of gender justice, issue of education, especially innovation and education. These are the very, very important goal which is mentioned. And in fact, this is a very, very clear deviance from earlier understanding of environment protection. For a few next few minutes, I would like to deviate from the original thought, and let me describe it, that if you want to protect the environment, if you want to protect the mother earth, then in that case, it cannot be done only in terms of thinking scientifically towards how to reduce carbon, how to maintain water availability, how to maintain clean and green water, clean and green environment, and how to maintain the surroundings, that is not merely possible. I mean, that could not be the only way to handle the environment unless you address the concerns which is the root cause of these problems. For example, poverty. You all know, because of non-availability of alternative energy sources, people use the woods, etc., for cooking of their food. Non-availability of other access, they are heavily relying on those sources of nutrition, those sources of food, those sources of things for building their house, building their other requiring their other needs, fulfilling their other requirements, that they are causing severe damage to the environment. Obviously, I'm not only blaming the need, but rather it is greed which is most important, most fatal in injuring, in damaging our environment. But yet we have to understand that poverty, inequality, the level of discrimination, the level of employment or the job opportunity, the gender discrimination, gender disparity, they all are responsible, and they all are collectively contributing into the overall environmental damage. If you can connect them, then only you would be in a position to really understand that why talk on environment is always looks like a filmy talk, rather more or less a kind of white eye washing on those things which are real danger to the environment. I mean, look for inequality, look for discrimination, look for access to basic needs: water, food, clothes, housing. You'll find out that all these are so closely connected to environment that if you are not going to address them, addressing environment would be mere talk. It will not result into any kind of I would say any kind of real substantial contribution or effort towards protecting the mother earth. And that's why in sustainable development goal, right from 1984 till 2015, when they have been talking more and more about these goals, finally they have come to conclusion. All the world leaders across the world have come to the conclusion that we should not address environment as a mere environmental issue, unless the social issues, unless the justice related issues, unless the access to opportunities related issues are going to be addressed, problem of environment cannot be solved. So it is in this sense right to education, which is a very specific goal of environment protection, and especially if you see the goal number, goal number 5, where we talk about the gender equality, or even goal number 9, when we talk about industry, innovation, and infrastructure. I mean, look it. If you're talking about environment protection, and you are not so careful, not so clear about the industries, innovations, and infrastructure, then probably the talk on environment would be a kind of futile talk. We all know that how the environment protection is so closely related to the technical innovations. Either technicalities or technologies were not sufficient enough to control the carbon emissions. They were not sufficient enough or adequate enough to control the noise pollutions or otherwise air pollutions. And now, because of new technology, you call it Bharat 4 or Bharat 6, BS4, BS6, ultimately they are resulting into some sort of environment protection. And they come from innovations in technology. So education linking to the technology would always go in a fair, having a fair chance of contributing a positive contribution to the environment. So there should not be a kind of diversion or distraction or a sort of segregation between education, technology, innovations, and environment. They are so closely connected. And when I'm talking about education, innovations, and education, innovations, and environment protection, I'm not merely talking about the scientific science subject or scientific education, but I'm talking about all other form of education. As I said, that goal number 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, they are so much social goal in nature that if you are even engaged in law teaching, if you are engaged in law academics, law research, you can always have a lot of contribution through the innovations, through the new form of argumentations, through new skill development, whereby you can contribute into poverty eradication, you can contribute into job creation, you can contribute into skill development, and thus you can always contribute to the goal 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 of the SDG, and thus you can easily contribute into environment protection. And when I'm saying so, I'm conscious of the fact. I think just a year back, I was speaking again virtually to another some college, and I focus on certain issues that you should not simply think that you are running a law school or you are running a law department or you are pursuing a law degree course. How come you can contribute into sustainable development? You can, if contribute only by filing a writ in the high court to protect some sort of environment. Not at all, not at all. The 17 goal which are there in SDG, they are not limited to environment protection through writ jurisdiction. They are they are very much expanded. They are very much clear that you can contribute into, if you are teaching, say example, even law teaching, and if you can create a bunch of students who would be skilled enough to generate their own employment, to address the other socio political or economic issues, not necessarily through court, but through other mediums. Don't you think that you are contributing so much, I mean, rather substantially towards environment protection? And in this way, we have to look the SDG. I hope in all other lectures, you will learn a lot about SDG, Sustainable Development Goal, that 17 goal. But in this particular lecture, I wish to emphasize that Sustainable Development Goal has obviously has a lot of to do with the other fields. But when we are in law, we must focus those 8 goals which are so specifically connected with the law, legal system, and legal education. And that's why I will not be discussing today the primary education. I hope that somebody will suddenly and surely narrate you the kind of primary education which we have presently. I'm very critical of primary education only because of the reason that 90% of schools in village area and rural area are mostly run by one teacher or a maximum one regular teacher and another Siksha Mitra. And that kind of education will only generate quantity, will have nothing to do with quality. That kind of education can focus only on some sort of result. What is the result? What is the result card shown at the end of academic year, but will not generate anything good. Will least, I would say, will least have least contribution it will have on one's own physical or moral or character, or even as a human resource building. So having this kind of understanding, you can always contribute a lot in the field of environment protection through education. And if you read these SDG, participants, I hope that you must have gone through with these SDGs, those 17 sustainable development goal. If you just relate them with your idea, goal number 16 is a specific goal. It talks about peace, justice, and strong institutions. When you are a law teacher, when you are a law academician, when you are a law researcher, contribution towards peace, contribution towards justice, contribution towards strong educations, the kind of these days, especially in India, there is a huge debate outside about the failing of institutions which are supposed to protect the democratic values and rule of law. A lot of claim is there, be it political institutions, be it bureaucratic or bodies or organizations, or even economic institutions. I hope that you can recall the debate with respect to when the former governor of RBI resigned, or the current these days when the CEO of NSE, Chitra Ramakrishnan, is arrested and she is under inquiry as to what she was doing, especially with respect to sharing of information and other things in the stock exchange. So, is there a kind of failure in the institutions, or democratic institutions, or institutions supposed to maintain rule of law? This is job of a law student. This is job of a law scholar, researcher. This is job of a law academician to enter into those domain and examine them, teach them in the class, debate them in the class, critically examine them, and then thereby contribute into the strong education system, so that these people can critique them, these people can raise questions, and thereby give some strength to such kind of legal institutions, or the other economic or other institutions which are supposed to maintain rule of law. And this way, look at this is how it is connected. It's not so tough to understand. This way, as a law student, as a law scholar, as a law academician, you can contribute in environment protection. I mean, a few days back, I received a very interesting research paper, and you will be surprised to know that when the SDG goal 5, which talks about gender equality as one of the mode of environment protection, or one of the means of environment protection, and a scholar has beautifully explained that how in India especially, how the positions where women can get selected by an examination are more than those positions where women could be elected through nominations, or elected by direct representation or by nomination. Thank God that we are going to have another women president for this country. Otherwise, you will find out that the positions, especially the higher positions, where the government, be it state government or the central government, can nominate directly. For example, just check it if you are interested in these kind of developments. Just check it how many women lawyers are designated as senior advocate in, say, Lucknow bench of Allahabad High Court, or the Allahabad bench of that High Court. You need to check it how many of them were promoted to the judgeship. How many positions are there occupied by women as as a vice chancellor, or as a any other body where government can simply choose and appoint? That research paper very carefully says that, as far as that research paper has nicely examined the judicial system and say, look at, as far as magistracy is concerned, judicial magistracy is concerned, number of women has increased substantially, because there they don't need any sort of choice of somebody. They go for examination, prepare into examination, crack the examination, and join. And that's where the percentage of them are increasing like anything. 30%, 40% are there. I have just heard, I don't know, that last year in UP Judicial Services examination, a lot of women, a lot of girls have joined the Judicial Services examination. But as against this, those positions where you can easily choose, be it member of your Vidhan Sabha, be it member of your Vidhan Parishad, be maybe member of the Jila Panchayat or something like that. See the numbers there. And there is stark difference there. There's a huge gap, which means that and in fact, with respect to the gender, the government of India was supposed to file a report in 2019 to the UN, and they have in fact not filed the report even. Obviously, what kind of report they will file if they have not done anything so substantially in this regard? My point here is that look at how goal 16, which is a sustainable development goal, is so connected with women, is so connected with legal institutions. Unfortunately, even today, when I see the list of students enrolled for PhD, I'm sorry, no offense to anybody, when list of students enrolled to PhD, I do not see these critical topics are being taken up by scholars, critiquing the system, critiquing the institution, critiquing the organization towards and finding out the alternative solutions. And probably this way, this reflects that our understanding about environment protection is very limited. Our understanding is, as what I have said in the beginning, that is more or less some sort of scientific contribution or some sort of technological innovations only. Only thereby you can contribute into the whole aspect of environmental development or environmental protection. uh, Leaving it, because I'll not be discussing all the issues of SDGs here. I hope that you can easily connect them with your other goals. But let me just introduce one more thought, which is very much connected with equality, inequality, poverty, gender justice, and that of environment protection. Because these things are the basics, these things are the fundamental, which often we miss in our discussion. On one hand, when the SDG says that remove poverty first, remove discrimination first, remove the inequality first, bring gender disparity so that you can protect the environment. Similarly, if you see the Constitution of India, the Constitution of India also focuses on these issues. See the preamble, it talks about equality. It talks about equality in terms of opportunity. It talks about justice, socio-economic and political. And moreover, it talks about brotherhood. It talks about brotherhood in terms of, obviously you can't talk about brotherhood in until and unless you have tackled the issues of poverty, tackle the issues of inequality, or have already addressed the issues of gender disparity. You can't talk about brotherhood. At the same point of time, and that's a very interesting aspect of Indian preamble, Constitution's preamble, it talks about protection, talks about preserving, assuring the dignity of all individual. When we talk about equality, when we talk about environment protection, and we see the society is at two distinct level. There is a one level where LPG gas is supplied through small pipes, and you just click the button and get the regular supply of that gas service continued without much problem. And on the other hand, you see villages or rural area, or even in urban area where slums and other things are there, where such kind of connection, taking connection itself is so tedious process. Very recently you must have heard that the government of India has increased not only the price of cylinder but also even the cost of license from 2000 to 3000, 4000 something. Means there is something flawed in the way we look towards this system. We will speak that there will be environment protection without thinking into that there are people who, if cannot afford the LPG, who cannot afford the alternative source of energy for their basic needs. I'm not talking about luxury. For their basic needs, then it's a quite obvious that they will fall back to the same old age old process, which will damage the environment. So, at the end of the day, if you are not addressing the issue of inequality, at the end of the day, if you're not addressing the issues of poverty, employment, if you're not addressing the issue of gender disparity, if you're not allowing women to come out and speak, come out and do job, if you're causing a kind of scenario outside wherein women are forced go back at home and work there, then obviously you will not be in a position to protect the environment. And when the environment is damaged, it will affect equally to all. Don't forget that it will affect little bit fairly to one but unfairly to other. Not at all, not at all. It will affect to all. And that's the reason that even Constitution of India, though in 1950 when we drafted the Constitution, we have not mentioned anything so specific in preamble or in part third, but yet part fourth was conscious enough, the framers were conscious enough to use environmental issues there. And that's the reason that they have put these things at the very outset. In fact, if you are aware about the Rawlsian theory of justice, I would like to connect here the Rawlsian theory of justice, when John Rawls says that ensure that basic goods are available to all at equal label. Basic goods means equality, opportunities, life, liberty, freedom of speech and expression. If these are not available to all equally, then you cannot bring justice by doing whatever you wish to do. You cannot bring justice. And in that way, the idea comes that, okay, equality, liberties, and freedoms, etc., should be given in part third, and some economic aspect can be left to part fourth. But we have by that process completed almost more than 70 years. So obviously we need to be conscious of this fact that these things no more can be ignored further, because then there will be a kind of what we call as a boomeranging effect, or what we call as something will revert it back to us, and it will cause severe damage to whole model which we have adopted. Having said these two things, I hope you can easily connect that how SDG, how the Constitution of India, both while while talking anything about the environment, they always want to assure that before protection of environment, the issue of poverty, issue of inequality, disparity, etc., will be addressed as such. Now, as I started at the beginning, when I said that law teaching, especially, is so closely connected with the concept of sustainable development, if you can just remodule your whole understanding of the law teaching, how I should connect it, what should be the method of connecting it. If you see the new education policy 2020, I'll not go into the details of the new education policy, but I would wish to say here just one line. New education policy 2020 talks about a little bit of what we called as experiential learning and critical thinking. Experiential learning, you read the document, NEP 2020 document, you will find out that the 2020 policy paper has been really critical, and the government itself understand that rather than asking a student to just go for mugging up everything, just go for chewing down every possible concepts and principles and philosophies, why not put these students in a position where he or she can learn something through experience, where he or she can learn something through what they called experiential learning process. Now, honestly, because I have also completed almost 15 16 years of teaching law, and somewhere fortunately in 2010 onwards I realized that the way we teach, the way we discuss, the way we critically evaluate concepts in the class, that cannot help us in understanding the practical side of the problem, that cannot tell us how and what are the behavioral or social or other reasons which are responsible for this problem. We kept on philosophically examining everything. I have no contempt to philosophy as such, but my point is that while understanding these things, while critiquing these things, it would be always good if we can place ourselves or place the student in a more practical environment, or you can say you can expose the student to the practical nitty-gritty, because that can contribute a lot in his skill development. And that where I always say that that we have to somewhere, I hope that those people who are in the conference in this particular FDP, especially if they are in academics, they can think seriously about the problem which we are facing these days in the law teaching especially. We are mostly concerned about the quantity than the quality. And when I say quantity, unlike primary school example where I have said quantity means number of people who have passed or the number of people who have failed, again there the quality is problem. In law teaching also, in law learning also, there is a confusion between quantity and quality. Quantity means what is the CGPA? 6% CGP, 6 CGPA, 7 CGPA, 8 CGPA, out of 10 is scale if it is there, sometime 9 CGPA. Imagine, I will not name a law school. Imagine a national law school grading a student with 9.2, 9.4 CGPA, and yet that student cannot be placed anywhere. Imagine that scenario. There is something flawed with this system. Because if somebody is having out of 10, 9.4 percentile or 9.4 CGPA, and yet that person is good for nothing, I'm sorry to use this word even, then there is something flawed with this system. And the reason is that the fellow having 9.4 percentile was never ever exposed to the practical nuances of things. That's why he or she was not taken, no company, no firm has shown any interest in him. Another confusion, which at the higher academic level I have seen, is between earning and learning. I call it, is it possible to have a sort of compromise between learning and earning? Or you can reverse it as well, earning and learning. Meaning thereby, is it possible to define a syllabi, to frame a syllabi, which can directly contribute into the earning? Or we should just keep on expanding the syllabi just for the sake of learning without having any connect with the earning? I'm conscious of the fact when I'm putting this point here in this FDP. I'm conscious of the fact that it is the Bar Council of India which defines the syllabus, which defines the minimum number of papers which a student is supposed to discuss, was supposed to learn in the class. So somewhere 20 compulsory paper, and then remaining 6 specialized paper, 8 special honors paper, and something like that kind of system is there. But are they really connected with the earning as such? Can we say so proudly, so honestly? I just take this example, and I hope in last 5-10 minutes we can interact on this issue. There is not a single NLU. I'm myself from NLU, and I'm very critical of certain things. There is not a single NLU which teaches land law. Though land law, I believe in department level, in a university level, in other law departments are compulsory. In fact, in my own, when I did my LLB from Allahabad University, that was compulsory paper. But none of the NLU out of 25, 26 NLUs which are there, they teaches land law. Now that's a very problematic. I was checking the revenue department's website of Uttar Pradesh some few months back, and I got to know that 26 lakh cases are pending for more than 3 years. Some of them are pending for last 20 years. 26 lakh cases pending in UP, and one of the prime reason accepted and admitted by the government itself is that the lawyers are not available for that. The skilled lawyers are not available for that. Some of the documents, especially old documents, are written in such a fashion which a new generation lawyer can't read. Sometime when I use the word khasra, khatoni, jama bandi, people sometimes get surprised. Ye kya hota hai, sir? But if you ask them what is IPR, what is copyright, what is IT law, they would be fluent on that. I realize, and this is my humble submission, I realize that there are certain gray areas which create problem, which contribute a lot of social economic issues in every state, and yet we have not taken them seriously. So land law is one. Similarly, this could be just one example that how, rather focusing on only, I'm not saying that is stop focusing on IPR, stop focusing on IT law, stop focusing on corporate law. Can we have an alternative vision also that we should focus on revenue laws? Can we develop a skill amongst the student that you have a lot of opportunities, not only in Supreme Court and High Court, but also in the Revenue Tribunal? I still remember honestly when in 2004 I visited the Revenue Board Allahabad. I couldn't recognize the building. अच्छा ये building है. There was no person at all inside the building. कुछ ऑफिसर्स एंड क्लर्क्स थे, वही बैठे हुए थे. लखनऊ का रेवेन्यू बोर्ड मैंने देखा नहीं, तो मैं रहा हूँ 3 साल वहां पे, बट आई हैव नेवर गॉन देयर, सो आई डोंट नो एग्जैक्ट पोजीशन. बट इलाहाबाद का मैंने उस टाइम पे देखा था. मेरे लिए दैट वाज सरप्राइजिंग that a country where more than 26 lakh cases are pending, in a state rather, not country, state, where this much cases are pending, why the hell people are not taking these cases seriously? There should be something flawed. And the flaw is that even though in bar council rule it is compulsory, especially for law schools, I mean the law departments, some of them have made it a compulsory paper, but in other it is totally ignored. No discussion is there. And that is now reverting back, giving a backfire. Since we are not aware about the local laws, not aware about the land laws, not aware about the revenue laws, not aware about the municipalities laws, what's happening? Suddenly a notice comes that a house was not constructed as per the required house in the Jilla Panchayat area or Nagar Panchayat area, and thus the government is ordering you either demolish or we will demolish and we will charge you also for demolishing it. And suddenly you come to know, oh, our house was required to have a proper map for before it could be built. I have a WhatsApp message. My own district, which is there in UP, one very poor fellow who is just selling sweets there, samosa banata hai. He has just constructed one more floor, ground floor tha, ek floor aur bana liya. And he has received a notice from the Jilla Panchayat that the area in which the house was constructed falls under the Nagar Panchayat area, in a Jilla Panchayat area. And thus you are supposed to take, first of all, map approval. And if it is not so, then there is a list of offenses which could be charged against you. Reply within 15 days. The fellow was shocked completely. And no religion angle should be read in this notice. I just put a caution. And then ask a question, why this happened? This happened because these issues, these legal developments were there, but totally unnoticed in law schools, in law departments. The law departments were focusing on IPR, law departments were focusing on copyright, trademark, international trade, international issues. And suddenly your ground is totally, what we call sifted beneath your feet, and you realize where I stand now. So I would say that the whole aspect of right to education, and when I'm saying education in terms of bringing equality, education in terms of bringing employment, education in terms of bringing the skilled people who can, skilled and conscious people who can instill a strength in the legal institutions, economic and political institutions. If so, then for that purpose, we have to understand somewhere the ambiguity which is there between learning and earning, between quality and the quantity. If we fail to distinguish between these two, probably we will fail again to address the issues which are standing in front of us like a monster, and probably we will be in a great trouble in coming days. Now, I have just taken one issue of revenue. I hope that in whichever college, law college especially, or a university you are there, whenever a teacher asks me, whenever a colleague asks me that, Dr. Saab, we always talk about practical learning, how we can have a practical learning. छोटे छोटे सब्जेक्ट्स हैं, क्रिमिनल लॉ है फॉर दैट एग्जांपल, सीपीसी है फॉर दैट एग्जांपल, हम प्रैक्टिकल लर्निंग करा सकते हैं बच्चों को. हाउ टू डू प्रैक्टिकल लर्निंग इन अदर सब्जेक्ट्स? I said, do you think, and my response is always very straight, do you think that the practical learning is only in criminal law? Because some of the students are so interested earlier in criminal law. Can't there be a practical learning in revenue law? Can't there be a practical learning even in tax law? Participants will be surprised to know one of the best clinic which work in the Harvard is not the legal aid clinic. is actually the tax law clinic. And in India, I can, with all consciousness, humility, and honesty, can say there is not a single law school, law department where there is a tax law clinic. And what is the usefulness of tax law clinic? That your student can sit there and guide so many people practically as to how to fill ITR, what is the nuances there of filling ITR. Because you all know, just one example, that if you are not submitting your ITR before December 31st, nowadays there is a 5,000 rupees fine if certain to a certain extent, and then thereafter 10,000 rupees fine. Not filing ITR. I mean, you might have filled your income tax, but merely not filing ITR will revert back in a terms of penalty on you. Your student can learn a lot if you just supply this free of cost information during their learning, and I'm sure they will enjoy it. You can also have a nominal charge to run the legal aid clinic or tax law clinic as such. You can just charge 1 rupee, 5 rupee, or 10 rupee for filling of ITR, and what's wrong? Your Vardha summit of Gandhi. I mean, once upon, it was suggested by Gandhi as well that why not a student should allow to learn and earn along with during their childhood, during their schooling, during their internship. There's nothing wrong into that. And this way they will be more skilled. This way they will be more job oriented. This way they will be more self-confident and serve the society. And you can then easily talk about SDGs, goal number 1 to 5 or goal 9 or 10. So this would be my humble submission that you should think of critically these issues, that how you can create a more skilled lawyer, not necessarily lawyer, a social worker, a person who is so you can say up in the thinking that they can create a lot of new avenues of earning. I just share one example. Poronju Veliath, there's a name in the Indian stock market. Poronju Veliath. He's a law graduate and he earns millions and millions through a stock exchange. Never joined a court. During law itself, he was exposed to security laws. During law, he was exposed to a little bit of economics. And then finally, after doing some clerkship in the telephone department, he decided to quit and go back to self-earning. Just this is one example, and there's so many other examples. I will share this at this platform. In this present year batch, which is passing out, almost 13 students of 27 batch who have taken business law, 13 were having their own demat account. So one of the student, I asked, what will you do? He's a typical Chandigarh guy. I asked, what will you do after LLB? Sir, मेरे को अपना stock exchange run करना है बस, और कुछ नहीं करना है. Why did you join the 5-year law school? And that too an LU of this particular, paying this much fee. Sir, our learning is always good, but I'm sure that I'm not gonna be in court. I'm earning a lot at this stage itself. I learned a lot from him. I learned that there are so many other spaces where you can encourage your students, so many other spaces where you can have a skill development. Before I close my lecture, I'll give you 2 more areas: the family law and the negotiations. So many disputes are these days in panchayat. So many disputes are these days in family. One of the private university in Noida, Galgotia, is doing good in negotiations. And they have the India's, I think, first family dispute negotiation center. I mean, think about innovations. This can contribute a lot in environment protection. So I close my talk for today. If you have any question, any query, you can critique me too, because I'm very straight on these issues. Thank you so much,
sir.
for
Thank you for delivering such a wonderful lecture, sir, and especially connecting with each and every SDG, that is very important and the basic essential of what we are just doing or running in the interdisciplinary faculty development program. Now, sir, there are 2 to 3 questions asked by the participants. One question number one is Sustainable Development Goal 4 that aims at ensuring inclusive and equitable quality education and promote lifelong learning opportunities for all. General Assembly set it the agenda at 2030. So, is it possible to achieve till 2030 as we are
No, not at
already
all.
in 2022
Not at
and
all.
we have
Not at all.
eight
It's not
years left,
possible.
sir?
Not at all. Not at all. You cannot. And I doubt about any set date until you prove it that you have done something. And since the UN has done it theoretically, the what we called as developing countries, especially the Asian countries, the way and the kind of thought process, the kind of democratic process, the kind of fundamentalism which is rising in these countries, especially, I would say that the other aim has gone or have taken the back seat. Take example of after the Myanmar. Now take the example of Sri Lanka. Take the example of Bangladesh. Take the example of our own country also. They talk about job. They talk about employment. They talk about inequalities, gender disparities, quality education has taken a back seat. We are busy in some different talks. And see the example of Sri Lanka. I mean, that's the best example because the characteristics are very much similar to the other Asian countries, except barring the Singapore. Other all Asian countries have the similar characteristics of Sri Lanka. And what if similar things are being repeated? Forget about 230, 2030. It can go much beyond that. And I don't know. That's why uh, I have a very clear opinion that unless you address them seriously, I hope that the students can examine, participants can examine in past uh, 15 to 20 years, if I'm correct, from 2006 onwards. As far as the corporate loan waiver is concerned, that goes around 38 lakh crore. After 38, you have to put 12 zero. 38 lakh crore corporate loan waiver is there. And what they have, what that has given to us, 0% GDP during 2020 to 22 growth rate. As against that, merely 8,000 crore loan waiver was there in 2008, 2009 to the farmers. Do you think that with this kind of policy, we are really going to achieve a shot of equality? I doubt. I seriously doubt, because the way, the kind of developmental model which we are, addressing, we are our academicians, we can understand it. From 2015 till date, UGC has rarely, issued any major research work. Thanks to ICSSR, that they have some research contributions. Otherwise, all the fund are blocked. I may have a reservation on the quality of research which is being conducted with students through these funded bodies, but once the research is blocked, forget about any possibility of innovations. So I really am I'm very you can say pessimist, but I'm very scared of these situations.
So, one more question we have from a participant. Why SDGs built on the principle leaving no one behind, that is disability and the persons with disabilities, and this particular term was there used in that SDG goals 11 times. So is it category specific or it is general for everyone?
No, it is general for everyone, but as you know that certain categories are required special mention. Until that special mention is there, human mind has a very flickering characteristics. It always forget the things, even if that is so obvious. Addressing the concerns of the poorest of the poor, which is there in any country, should be the first priority. Unfortunately, that has never ever been done. The father of this country, the father of nation, Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi, once said that if you want to know whether you are doing good or bad, try to see whether your act or your deed is causing some good impact on the person who is standing last in the queue. Probably this ideology was taken by the UN people when they drafted SDG. They said that we will mention especially those people again and again whom we have always ignored. So that's why categories like women, categories like poor, like disabled have been mentioned repeatedly, just to tell them that obviously environment protection will do benefit for all, but these are the major concerns. You address them first, otherwise whatever else you will do will go in vain.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for giving such a point-wise and clear explanation to the questions asked by the participants. Last but not the least, I would like to invite Dr. Sadaf Khan, ma'am, to deliver a vote of thanks for today's session.
Thank you, Dr. Shipra. A very good afternoon to all of you present here. I consider it a great privilege to propose a vote of thanks to all of you who have witnessed it as a memorable. Sir has elaborated very well about the education system in 21st century. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. I'm sure the participants who present at this platform will have a lot to take away from this lecture. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir, for
Thank you, Dr.
elaborating
Sadaf.
everything so
Thank
precisely
you.
and elaborately. Thank you for
Thank you.
coming and enlighten all of us, sir. Thank you once again.
Thank you. Thank you so much for inviting. Thank you. Thank you.